Well, Janis, thanks so much for joining me today. Janis Snaid, Director of National Accounts, and oh, help me with that. I already forgot it.
Practice development.
Practice Development. God, I was so close.
So close.
Director of National Accounts and Practice Development.
Well, thank you. It's so good to be back.
Yeah. So we talked last year. I know we've got some up on our site, but we had a fun talk where we've talked about it. I mean, Tom Brady was a thing that stands out to me because we did like the before and after, and we went all over the map, and I
We
learned so
did.
much. Um, I think we first met was that 2 years ago or 3 years ago now down in
I think
Atlanta.
it
That
was 3.5 years ago. Yeah.
wow, it's been a long time
Three,
ago,
three and a
but
half years ago. Yeah.
I enjoyed hearing you talk there at that conference, and so thanks for joining me. And we've got some questions to go through here. Just love to have your hear what's going on and have some input on the industry. Maybe share some knowledge with everyone else out there. I know you've got a lot to
Absolutely.
share.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. A lot of just opinions and what we're seeing and what's working, what's not working. So
Yeah. So tell me something about that. What have you seen going on the last year? It's probably a lot's happened since we last chatted.
yeah, I think it still comes down to our three big sectors of injectables, microneedling, and lasers. But there's definitely some really cool new things that are coming out and that have come out already. So on the injectable side, I'm sure maybe you've heard of Skin Vive, which is all the buzz. And it's basically, it's not quite, it's filler, but it's not filler for filling purposes. It's filler for more rejuvenation purposes. So it's intradermal filler instead of subdermal filler. And it's really just to make you look hydrated and glowy. And so it's not really going to be there to add volume. It's just going to make you look less tired. Obviously, RF microneedling is still really, really big. Um, Exosomes have become really big. So some are plant derived and there's others, but exosomes in the sense of you microneedle it in for hair restoration or you microneedle it in for collagen and elastin production. A lot of people use exosomes to help um, speed the healing process for certain treatments and things like that as well. So those are really kind of the big things happening. And then, what's really taking off more so now than anything is how people are, differentiating their business, which I know we'll get to with recession and things like that. But is the holistic wellness side of things. So the let the inside match the outside and optimizing your internal
Uh,
health and things like that as well.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, what about with VI Peel? Do y'all have any big updates there? Any new products?
Yeah, so we have some pretty cool new things. We have some things down the pipeline. I don't know too much if I'm allowed to say certain things, but maybe in the lines of like an at-home peel or something along the lines of that.
Oh, cool.
But we're also bringing out a body brightening system, which is, a lot of people ask us. We did launch our body peel since the last time we spoke, I think, or we had
Oh,
just
cool.
launched it the last time. So we now have a system that's going to be launched soon that complements the body peel for a wash and a lotion as well. And that will help things with KP or keratosis pilaris or that chicken skin scarring, generalized dryness, things like that, dullness of the skin, and exfoliation of the body as well. So lots of cool things coming out.
Yeah.
Um, we have a melasma reduction system, which is amazing because obviously melasma is a beast in and of itself.
Yeah.
And that is actually our pigment correcting system, which is topical at home product, and then paired with our Precision Plus peel. And we have a skin brightening system, which is unbelievable, fills a really niche market for us, which is that pregnancy market, which you
Okay.
can't use retinols and trets and things like that, or
Uh,
hydroquinone. And usually, when hormones are one of the biggest triggers of melasma, so our wonderful clinical team and our owner, Maria, came up with a skin brightening system where the featured product is a dark spot lifting serum. And instead of using hydroquinone, it actually uses a 5% tranexamic acid. And
Okay.
what that does is it mimics a hydroquinone like result where it's going to help suppress the melanocytes, but it's safe to use for maybe more sensitive skin, patients who are pregnant where you can't use hydroquinone or retinols, and for patients who are cycling off their hydroquinone because it's not something you can stay on forever. So lots of
Gotcha.
new things happening.
Yeah, that's great. I remember last time talking about one of the big pushes at that convention and also in our podcast last year was, pushing that trifecta of treatment, so three different, well, I'll let you talk about it instead of me talking about it. You do such a better job.
Well, so really with the trifecta, it really is in that good, better, best modality that we love so much. I always use good, better, best to sell. And it really should be multimodality. So it should never be a good treatment is one VI peel, a better treatment is two, and a best is three. It should be something like a good treatment is a that's whatever their condition is or their primary concern. Let's say they're coming in for, pigmentation. Well, a good treatment would be a VI peel. A better treatment would be a VI peel plus maybe an IPL at a later date or before, or alternating them and doing, 1 month, 1 month. And then maybe a best treatment would be the VI peel with the IPL with a pigment suppressor like a hydroquinone or a tranexamic acid serum, or you can add in any other type of treatment that you have. So you can do a good, better, best for. I always encourage offices to do a good, better, best for their treatments, but then to also do a good, better, best for their products. You can combine the two, but I like to have two separate ones because not every treatment is catered for every person, and products, you need to be able to maneuver them on your own. So,
Right.
for pigment, obviously a good might be let's just start with a sunscreen, right? Let's make sure that
Right.
we're not, affecting more damage on the skin. A better might be a hydroquinone or a tretinoin, or a tranexamic acid or something like that, plus the sunscreen. And then a best might be those plus adding in maybe an antioxidant or something along those lines, like a vitamin C or an E. And what that really does is, patient expectations in our industry is the number one issue.
Right.
Setting appropriate patient expectations and making sure your patients understand what the treatment can actually offer and what it can't. And by selling in a good, better, best modality, you're doing two things. The first thing you're doing is you're setting your patient expectations right off the bat, because if your patient chooses the good treatment, that's wonderful, but you cannot expect best results with a good treatment.
Right.
So you're giving them prescriptive options, and then they can choose, obviously, but it's indicative of what the result is going to be. You're going to get a good result, a better result, or a best result.
Yeah.
And then the other portion to good, better, best, and why it's easy to sell is because sales is psychology, right? So it's 20% what you're actually selling, and then 80% how you position it, which is why so many of people in our industry can have the exact same business, and some people are successful and some aren't because they're positioning everything differently. Um, and so with the good, better, best, it teaches you how to position your products in a strategic sales manner so that your patient who's coming in asking for a good treatment, well, if you give them the good treatment, it's still a good treatment. But what if you could give them something better? And what if you position the good treatment as if there are, which there are, let's say, two better options, a better and a best, then psychologically in the patient's head, they'd say, not everyone can afford the best, but most people can make the jump from good to better. And by that, you're increasing your ROI, your per patient ROI, whether it's same day or not, which is really important. And you're using multimodality, which is forcing that patient to come back in more frequently as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, of the practices that you're going to, I'm curious to hear your response to this. Because a lot of the practices I talk to every week, and we do like the discovery calls and marketing audit calls, and I get to kind of see how the inside of their practice is working.
Mhm.
I have pretty consistent feedback in one area, but how many practices do you go into that already have like a nailed down sales process for their team when they go into a room, or, they know how to package these products together. Like they know what their average profit per room per hour is. Like, is that every practice, or is that a small
I'd
amount of them?
I'd probably say 5%. 5% of practices, maybe 10% if we're stretching it. But it is like I do those seminars for VIPL all over, and I do one-on-one calls with offices and training. And that is the biggest problem is they don't want to sell. They don't want to sound salesy, which is an issue, but that's completely irrelevant because you don't sell, you educate. So that takes the entire sales word or process out of it.
Yeah.
But one of the questions I always ask when I do my seminars, and our seminars have, minimum of 100 people, is how many people look at their numbers on a daily basis? And maybe one person will raise their hand. And then I'll say, how many people look at your numbers on a weekly basis? Maybe five people will raise their hand. And
Yeah.
I will say, I start with the question of who knows what if you can tell me right now what your largest volume procedure is in your office, raise your hand. And maybe two people. And so
Wow.
people, and that's when I start the seminars go, my line that my dad told me all the time, which is you can't manage what you can't measure. And
Yeah.
so if you're not measuring anything, then you have absolutely no growth. You have no perception. You
Yeah.
don't know where to start. You don't know what to work on. You don't know where you're doing well. You don't know if there's theft. You don't know all these different things that can be told just by doing a basic audit from your reports.
Yeah. So you're helping a lot of these practices then with like what you do at VIP, like coming in and help give them strategy and helping them work through all of that.
Yeah, and so, like, at VIPL, I always say, I don't want VIPL to do well in your office. I want everything to do well in your office. And that starts, even yes, you need to look at your numbers and manage that, but it starts even before that, which is, our industry next to the food and beverage industry has one of the highest turnover rates in the country annually. I mean, we're sitting at around 33%, which is an enormous turnover rate. And a lot of it has to do with payment, a lot of it obviously. But this year, actually, statistically, there was one thing that took over payment of why people leave offices, and it is appreciation. So,
Oh, wow.
really making sure your staff feel valued and appreciated. And, we were looking at some statistics, and uh, I'll ask you this question. So there's something that offices spend more money on annually than they do on their staff training. What do you think it is?
Well, it could easily be marketing and advertising. That would definitely be one. Product cost, that would definitely be another.
You're going to laugh when I tell you this.
Rent, that's probably a high one. What am I missing? Insurance,
It's not an obvious one, but when
rent.
you hear it, you're like, oh my goodness, people really spend more money on this in their offices annually than training their staff and making their staff feel valued and important.
I'm gonna feel dumb when you say it, so go ahead and let's get this going.
You won't feel dumb. Most people don't get it. Coffee. They spend
Coffee.
more money on their annual coffee budget in their office than they do training their staff.
Wow. Now that's an interesting statistic.
Yep. It's about 70%.
Wow.
It's crazy.
So how do practices go about training their staff? I mean, have you seen it just
So
all internal? Do I have help for that, or?
it really depends. Honestly, a lot of practices, so in our industry, if you're an esthetician or if you're a treatment provider, you sort of stick to your niche, but you know how I feel front desk is the most important part of an office. Your first impression, I spend the most time with them. They are the most abused part of your office. They're always blamed when something goes wrong. They're never given credit when something goes right, but front desk keeps the office running.
Yeah.
And it actually does take a lot of balancing to be able to answer phones, check patients in,
Oh,
deal
for
with
sure.
disgruntled patients, make sure the schedule's running smoothly, make copies, get, referral letters, get, pre-authorizations if
Yeah.
you're in an insurance-based derm practice or there's so many different moving parts, and oftentimes everyone's doing this, one person's doing everything.
Yeah.
Um, And so a lot of people sort of just throw their staff to the wolves. They're like, "Oh, hands-on training, here you go."
Yeah.
Or they go through some kind of HR training, which is supposed to include formal training, not just going through the handbook and policies. But a lot of times it doesn't. And so, I know when I started in the industry, I was sort of thrown to the wolves, and I'm a self motivator. So for me, I gave myself 6 weeks to really learn the basics of the industry, but not everybody does that. And so, it's very difficult. I think that is the one place where most people have the hardest time is onboarding.
Yeah.
And if you're not onboarded correctly, it's only downhill from there.
Right. Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I've learned that in my own business, but especially in a business where you have customers coming, patients coming in every day, they have to have that. What's the brand or the practice mission? What are the values? How do you speak to someone? All that. Not to mention, like you said, all the hats are wearing, including requesting reviews. Probably doing their social media. Um, and in my experience, I've seen that usually those positions that feel like are kind of entry level that come in, but they have such heavy importance to the practice. Do you know, like, what do you think practices should pay for someone at the front desk? I know this is challenging because it's going to depend on area and city, but
Yeah.
y- if there's say average practice 1.5 million a year revenue, something like that, what do you think they should pay for someone up front to do a quality job?
Well, I mean, cost of living now is outrageous.
Sure.
Just general cost. So it is different from, when I started 10 years ago in the industry. But, I mean, minimum wage is 15.25 right now. It's crazy. And a lot of people can't, I know my family businesses, which are gift stores. I mean, if we had to pay that, we'd be out of business. We couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So, there's tips and all that. So um it's it's tough. I mean, you look at it, and an entry level esthetician who's just graduated from aesthetic school is at, 19 to 21, 19 to 23 an hour with a commission based structure. So your front desk, I mean, some people are at, anywhere from 15 to 17 an hour, sometimes maybe in bigger offices where they have, more hats, it's maybe a little bit more, but it really depends. But I think what's important, if you're in an office, I was very fortunate where I joined an office that really promoted and allowed my growth, with the effort that I put in. And so I think at the front desk, there's enormous room for growth in an office, if they understand the value of having a good front desk person. But part of the problem is the scalability of it, which is making sure that everybody gets the same service all the time. So that comes with having an ironclad onboarding program. And you can't get mad at one of your staff if you didn't onboard them appropriately, and maybe
Right.
they don't speak the way that you want it represented, or they don't, if you don't even have a mission statement where there's goals or something like that, that's a problem, because that's again building your business before your brand. And people think mission statements are silly, but it helps you identify your brand and where you want to be,
Yeah.
and it helps guide your business and how you conduct your business.
Yeah.
Um,
Unites the team.
100%, and
Yeah.
everyone has one common goal. And so it's really important. When I talk to offices, the first thing I'll say to them is, "What's your mission statement?" When I'm talking with owners, and they're like, "We don't have one," and I'm like, "All right, well, let's start there." And you don't have to write this, Shakespearean mission statement.
Right.
It's just a write down the top three things that are most important to you that you want your business to represent.
Yeah, yeah. We just had to go through that again, and if we're talking before this call, but about EOS and running
Yeah.
my company through EOS, and that's one thing we had to go through and write our core values,
Yep.
our mission statement, and all that. And it was something that should be so easy, but after 12 years of being in business, I kind of had to think again because like things kind of change and progress, and it's like, all right, what are we? Who are we? But I feel like it's really helped the team
Yeah.
internally. It's definitely got value for any business, having everyone on the same page, knowing how to, what they're working towards, uniting towards goals definitely
Well, and
helps.
even just, if certain elements are incredibly important to you, let's say like customer service, then that is something that is at the forefront of your thought and training process all the time, that you deliver excellent customer service. I always give the example of Chick-fil-A, right?
Oh
You
yeah.
know, whenever you go to any Chick-fil-A, you're going to get the same level of service because they have an ironclad, even if it's a franchise, the franchisees go through ironclad operating systems of how you onboard, how you train, and it's quality. So, it is an element of hire the smile, train the skill.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with people who are working as the first impression makers of an office. And that starts over the phone.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, when you go into different practices and examine, how everything is going, do you think this is one of the things that separates the successful ones from the kind of flatlined, like barely squeaking by practices? And what else do you think contributes to that?
Yeah, 100%. So onboarding number one is always everyone's Achilles heel.
Yeah.
It's whether some people might be very good at the clinical part of it, but they have absolutely no idea how to translate the science into sales. And then some people might be really good at the sales part of it, but they need a little bit more help on the clinical side. That's like where I come in, where my niche is merging the science, sales, and marketing all together. Um, but um, but it is very important to recognize people's strengths, and to, if you do find someone who is, very good with a lot of potential, then you have to have an in-house trainer as well. So yes, you have your, operations onboarding, but you need to have the person that you would want your office to shadow. You would want your staff to shadow, to be able to get that. And if it's the owner, great. If it's it depends on where it is, but it all works down from the top, right? So
Yeah.
if the goal is not in place at the top, then it's going to be a problem. And so that, I would say, is the number one um, differentiator for successful versus unsuccessful practices, is going to be that training customer service element, where people still buy from people. And 93% of people will still pay for a better customer experience, which is also really important to know. Um, the second thing I would say that a lot of practice fail because of are overextension. So in our industry, there's lots of new stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And people want shiny new toys, and they want
Yeah.
all the stuff, and they want all the new products. And
And
the
you can
problem is,
finance them. Yeah.
it costs a lot of money. And the financing looks great up front because it's 0% for the first 6 months. But by the time you get a new device and actually get it up and running, most of the time you haven't generated a ton of revenue from it before that 0% 6 months hits.
Yeah.
Um, and you have to build credibility with a new device. And so it's very it's tough. A lot of people are in the red. And I mean, a lot of, I would say, owners in our industry have not particularly phenomenal credit.
Yeah.
Um, which is scary because, they always say, what's the easiest way to get rid of a laser rep, right? It's to buy a laser. And then you'll never see them again.
Right.
Until they want you to buy something else. So I think it's important to remember that, if you can't pay for it, don't get it yet. If you know that you can't make that monthly payment. I have offices that are before rent, before payroll, before utilities and everything. They're 65K in the hole on device payments.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that's a mammoth elephant on your chest, and that's a month.
Yeah.
Because they want all the shiny new toys, and your money gets eaten pretty quickly. And then I think that the other thing with that is inventory. So inventory kills cash flow always. And I think a lot of people, some product lines have a $5,000 minimum opening order. That's an enormous amount of product.
Yeah.
Huge. And that's up front. So it's not like a device where you can generate and pay. It's you got to cash on deliver, pay it, and then you get your stuff.
Yeah.
So, and you don't know if you're going to sell it. You know, something might come out differently. There's unfortunately not a lot of protections anymore with selling online. And, you know, it used to be when I started that offices did, or companies did have some client protection where they would really try not to sell their skincare product online. Obviously, medical services, you can't. Some people try to, but you know, some people try to ship chemical peels or things like that, but it's not particular. It's frowned upon. Obviously, when you're dealing with medical grade acids, you don't want them in the hands of someone who doesn't know how to apply them.
Right.
But the product wise, there's not a lot of protection anymore because you can get it everywhere, even if
Yeah.
it is medical grade. So, you know, I know at VI Peel we have a whole team that just looks for diverters, people who are buying in large bulk and selling on alternate markets, and we shut them down immediately. But
Oh, wow.
um, you know, that's not all product lines do that because, you know, we're still a treatment, so it's a little bit different, where, you know, we have to be careful with our peel getting into the wrong hands. Whereas product is product, you know. Everyone
Right.
always says what's the worst that can happen, and then we see things like the over the counter peels from Sephora, and patients don't listen, or they don't read, or they want to make it stronger, they want to, you know, do, and they
Right.
end up burning their face off because they're just applying so much all the time that it, you know, they get hyperpigmentation and they just kind of, it's not great.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So of now, and I guess I should start this question with VIPs being sold to plastic cosmetic surgeon practices. I imagine usually they might have VIPL med spas, dermatologists,
Yep. So
any
we're
other
medical
practice.
grade, have to have a medical director in place. So our biggest market is obviously going to be the med spa, the dermatology offices, and the plastic surgery offices as well.
Gotcha. And I know across those, profit margins are vastly different. Where like plastic
Sure.
cosmetic surgeon, 70 to 90%, just great profit margins. And I've seen where they have probably done the best because then they can add med spas, to their practice. And then it's a
Yep.
feeder program to the elective surgeries and so on. But for med spas, they're usually fighting over what, like 15 to 30% profit margin, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's, you know, definitely um it's tough, and that's where, you know, I come in with the training aspect of it, of build helping them build their business by, you know, you can't sell individual treatments, you have to sell packages, you have to sell, but not just necessarily packages of the same treatment, you have to learn how to bundle your services. It's just like going to the gym, you know. If you went to the gym every day 7 days a week and did 45 minutes on the elliptical, that's great, your cardiovascular health will be in great shape, but eventually your body isn't going to be doing much anymore. Which is why the most in shape athletes, they do HIIT training, they do yoga, they do arms and legs and backs all on different days, to be able to make sure they're hitting their body from all different angles. And it's the same thing with our skin. We need to make sure that we are giving it a variety of different treatments, because you can build a resistance, you can build a plateau, just like with anything. I mean, you can even develop a toxin resistance.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you need to be making sure that you're training for comprehensive consultations where you're treating the entirety of the patient, not just the physical representation. Um, and usually it's a multi-modality process that you need to go through with treatment. You can't cure everything with one treatment. I wish you could, but you can't.
Right. Right. So I was just curious while you're talking that I do a little Google search on how many med spas there are in the United States because I
Uh-huh.
get different data all the time. And I see where AmericanMedSpa.org is saying in
Yeah, and
2022, yeah, there was 8,841. But then I see another data point down here from another website. It was January 9th of this year. There's now 28,000 med spas. I don't know if that's accurate or not. Does that?
well, so here's what's happened. There is an enormous surge. So there's been about a 25% increase in family medicine doctors that have opened med spas. pain management who have opened
Yeah.
med spas, dentists who have opened med
I
spas.
see that
So,
one a lot. Yep.
yep. So there's a huge variety now of it's not just the derms and plastics that have, a subsection of their offices that are med spas. But, there's, you know, you can be a nurse practitioner and depending on your state, you can act as your own medical director, as a nurse practitioner, an MD, a DO, a DDS, all of that. So it really has opened the door for a lot of patients. What we've seen now is people operating under med spa, but they really are, let's say, just traveling injectors, or they're still, I see a lot of people who are still working full time, let's say as a CRNA or as a PA in a hospital or something like that. But then as their side gig, they're still using that full time job to fund a med spa, whether it's a brick and mortar or they're traveling, just so that they can full time get out of the hospital because the grind there has gotten kind of crazy, and
For
especially because
sure.
everyone is so short staffed now. So, I think the biggest problem that I do see with that is people think I open my doors as a med spa and people will just come. And
Right.
that's a huge misnomer. That's not
Yeah.
true. It is a hustle and it is a grind, and it's going to take you a solid 18 months to get a footing with substantial patients to fill your schedule, and come in on a recurring basis. So, that's the one thing I always tell people when they first start is, unfortunately, they always usually find me when they've already started, tried that whole, oh, well, I'm already 6 months open and I haven't had any patients. And I'm like, it's not like you can just put out a toxin sign and people are
Yeah.
just going to show up. That's not how it is,
So true.
especially because it's so competitive. So, that's where they need your services, and that's where it's so important to get your presence out there, but it's tough, and I think more and more are opening up, but because they are so burnt out with the general health system, if they're a PA, an NP, CRNA, whether it's hospital or private practice, because people just don't want to go to work anymore. So
Right.
they're burnt out and they want something a little easier, and they think, oh, everyone gets toxin. Everyone, first of all, it takes you a long time to establish credibility as an injector.
Oh, for sure.
Um, it's not something you can just wake up and start doing. So
And
it's
everyone wants to see before and afters too. It's one of the most viewed pages on a website is
yeah,
before and afters.
yep,
We don't have any. It makes it even more challenging.
exactly.
Um,
Exactly. So it's tough.
I've got a call with actually later today, a call with a doctor from up north, I believe Michigan, and it's Zach's story that you basically just kind of told as far as like his wife has a dental practice. It's very successful, and then now they're adding aesthetic treatments to it. So fillers, Botox, lasers like IPL, and they've invested, but they don't know why they're not getting business to it.
Yep.
And and you start talking about strategy for search results, right? How do you get in that Google map listing for Botox near me, fillers near me, laser hair removal near me, all those main buzzwords. Um, and so now they're sitting on this financial investment with the machines they've ordered, and they're trying to figure out how this all works. Top of at the same time, consumer credit card debt's at an all-time high at 1.7 trillion is the last number I saw in the United States. And so people have less money to spend while the amount of med spas have kind of gone through the roof. So it seems like now's the time, if there ever is a time, to really get everything fine-tuned to have a successful practice. What do you see as like the main services that are the most successful, like the most successful practices that are med spas that you go into? If you had a top three, what would those be that make them the most profitable or successful?
Well, I mean, it really depends on the business. So, for instance, some businesses may not have any lasers. Some businesses focus only on facial aesthetics. Some businesses focus only on body. So, it really depends. I would say, in general, laser hair removal is a commodity at this point, so it strictly competes on pricing. It's really not particularly um, profitable from the sense of it's not a novel, it's just not that profitable anymore. It's
Right.
what it is. I would dare to even say, unfortunately, toxin has sort of become a commodity where I wish it people didn't do it based off of competing on pricing, because your injector is so important. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, if you get a poor injector that you go to because you compete on pricing, just like with laser hair removal, you can really mess someone up with these devices. So I think, biggest products and services, the profit margin is so profit margin services are different from, I would say, the most popular,
Okay.
because people have high profit margin services are things like, anything with a low consumable. So like, if laser hair removal is a commodity, but things like IPL, those are pretty high profit margins, because your consumable is, once you've paid off your device, let's say your consumable is just a little bit of ultrasound gel, and your treatment time, and it's a fairly quick treatment time. Chemical
Yeah.
peels, gigantic profit margin. Um, you know, uh, Toxin, not so great anymore, but that would be the most popular, right? So
Right.
you can't equate most popular with highest profit margin. I would say, the main categories in an office are going to be injectable, microneedling, and lasers, for different things. So think, certain devices have a lot of downtime, a lot of handhold downtime in the treatment room, where it's like you start and then you stop and you got to handhold a little bit because it
Right.
hurts so bad. And then you start going, and then you have to numb for 30 minutes prior. And so all of that eats into your patients your offices where they numb the patient in a room and they don't put them in the waiting room. Well, that's eating up your ROI per room per hour. So there's lots of
Good
things that you
point.
can do to help maximize that value, but it really depends on what it is. RF microneedling, the tips are pretty expensive, but you do make a pretty good profit margin off of those. I would say regular microneedling is probably a little bit better. And then regular microneedling with PRP or PRF or exosomes or things like that, that's even a higher profit margin, because you have the tip, but then you're really paying for that external benefit that you're infusing into the skin, which, PRP would take the most time because you draw the blood and then you spin it down and take the plasma. Whereas things like exosomes and other things, HA that you can infuse, they're just easily readily available. So it really depends on what your staff is like, how many rooms you have. It's a successful medical practice. And I'm not saying this in any way to deter people who are not here. But statistically, a successful med spa is running roughly $750 to $1,000 per room per hour. Um, and really, the only way you get there, to be honest, is through combination therapy. Because, if you look at, toxin, for instance, all right, toxin is pretty easy to do because some people book, and at the very maximum, people book in 30-minute appointments. So you're generating two per hour. But
Right.
what if you took, so let's say, average toxin, let's say $12 a unit, people get 40 units, $480. Um, Max, they do it in 30 minutes, that's two per hour. But what if you could easily just add on a VI peel to that for an additional 350, um, for no more time added? That's the thing. You're
Right.
not adding any more time and you're enhancing the results. Same thing if I know injectors who book in 10-minute appointments. So, but
Oh, wow.
again, those are your well-oiled machines where their MA is prepping, and
Yeah.
drawing their toxin for them, reconstituting it, and they're just room to room injecting.
Yeah.
Um, First time injector appointments are a little bit longer, obviously. Filler takes longer too, especially if you numb for it. So, I mean, there's
Yeah.
all these different things that equate to it, that really, make a difference in that process.
So I got another random question for you. We have a client that's in the Midwest, and
Mhm.
they're a very successful cosmetic surgery practice that just added a med spa the last year.
Sure.
Of course, it's to help build that kind of feeder program, and to keep patients coming back, and of course to help the patients surrounding their practice with all their needs. That's I make it sound so sales driven only in numbers that makes me sound like such an asshole. It's like, oh, okay,
No,
but I've got to get out of just business all. Yes, it's to help, help people and help patients.
sure.
Um, but one of their concerns is that offering Botox deals, because that's, typically if you have a good Botox deal or filler deal, that's a great Facebook, Instagram ad. It converts really well. It's easy to get people in the door, but there's very little loyalty with it. It's just like you're saying, it's almost become a commodity to where everyone's just price shopping and they hold out until they find the cheapest.
Yep.
So they're very much against running any sort of special on Botox or fillers. It, I'm torn on it. I see their point, but I also see that the data on our side, like we know that it gets people in the door, and then you have the chance maybe to sell them and not sell them. That's again sounds bad, like I'm an asshole. You get a chance
Educate
to
them.
educate them. Thank you.
Educate them.
And tell them about your brand and all the other services, and make them, show them the great customer service you have. What are your thoughts on it?
So, um, I will be very honest. I am not a discounter. Only because yes, can you do promotions? 100%. Should you do promotions? 100%. But unfortunately, what happens is a lot of people will overextend themselves, or they buy something that maybe doesn't translate phenomenally well into their practice, or they don't have the infrastructure, or they haven't had the proper training, or all these different things. And then they get desperate, and then they get on the hamster wheel of promos and discounts. And once you're on that wheel, it's very hard to get off of it.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good point.
so I don't like to even get people on that wheel. Unfortunately, when most people come to me, they're on that wheel and I get them off of it. And first and foremost, you have to value your medical credentials. I always tell people, be picky with your friends, your clothes, and your injectors, because they can do so much damage, just like with anything. If you want the cheapest and you go to Tijuana to get filler, you might be getting some cement in your face.
Yeah.
You just don't do it. If you're
Right.
willing to pay, or if you're willing to risk that, then by all means go for it, and then find a good person when you need it to be revised. Botched is a whole show that's been around for 25 years now, 20 years. Um, because people are always still going to go for the cheapest. I can't tell you how many people go to Turkey for hair implants and for dental work and all that kind of stuff. And Turkey's like the new aesthetic hub of the world because it is so cheap.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's not a sustainable business model. To fly to Turkey every time you need filler, or to do something like
Right.
that. You have to find somebody near you. So, um, certain things you can discount on if you want to. Um, Filler injectables is not one of them. It takes you a lot of time to be able to learn how to do that. So I always tell offices that are on the discount wheel, I say, you went to school to be able to do this. All right. So but for 3 states in the United States, you have to be an RN or higher to be able to inject. Um, Colorado, Minnesota, and Texas, they do allow estheticians to inject with certification and things like that. But you go to school for it. You pay a lot of money to be able to do it. One of the things that I always say to offices, especially when they're struggling to, they're devaluing themselves by learning to compete and stay on this hamster wheel. First of all, you don't know what anyone else is getting their toxin for. So you can't compete with somebody else who is selling it at $10 a unit and they're paying for 30 for a vial, $4.30, let's say a unit. Because they're a humongous, 8 provider office. They're booked all the time. They have huge status with AbbVie. They sell Skin Medica. They sell Cool Sculpting. They do all of that to increase their status to purchase more things to be able to get their toxin at a lower price. And it's the same thing for all these other companies. So I always tell injectors, you don't charge what you charge because you can do what you can do in 10 or 15 minutes. You
Right.
charge what you charge because of the 20 years it took you to be able to do what you can do in 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And that's a big difference. So a lot of it is, and I'll be honest, a lot of what I do with training is making sure that people recognize their value and their worth in the market. So all of that combined, no, I am not a big discounter. If you, let's say, I will say to someone, if you add a VI peel onto your treatment same day, you can get $1 off per unit. You're making up the margin. For every unit of toxin that you purchase, you can get that amount of dollars off your next treatment for if you add, let's say, a VI peel or a facial or whatever it might be. My personal preference is to get patients on a membership program. Membership program means I specialize in building out membership programs for offices, but
Okay.
membership programs are you join the membership, which encompasses an abundance of discounts, but you're making up the overhead in the monthly fee. Um, or you pay a la carte, which is significantly higher than if you join the membership. So I build out a 3-tiered membership program model. Let's just call it good, better, best, or whatever you want to call it. Some people do
Sure.
gold, silver, platinum, some or silver, gold, platinum. Some people do names attributed to their office or whatever their name is, doesn't
Sure.
matter. And it always starts with something like this. Let's say, depending on what their value of services are. So, depending on what they want to include in their services. So, for a monthly fee, let's call it $149 a month. I always sell in nines. Statistically, nines sell better than zeros. Anyone can do 10% off $100. You ask them to do 10% off of $149 and they lose their mind, or $99 and they are like, all of a sudden basic math goes out the window. Um, so it always starts out monthly complimentary consultation up to 30 minutes. We need your patients coming back in. All right. So I don't want your patients to buy one thing and never see you again. I want them to come in all the time. And so you build in these membership programs where you add value for them to come back more often. And that's really where this biohacking or biorejuvenation is really becoming huge in our industry. Because the profit margins are very large. Let's say, like, you throw in a B12 shot, it costs the office 35 cents, but it's an added value of, let's say, $75, or something along those lines. So there's lots of different things. And what we're finding with, let's say, the biohacking or things like that is people don't know how much better they can feel. So we make them look great and feel great on the outside, but we need to make that match the inside as well. And because, the trend has sort of shifted in aesthetic wellness now, where it's biorejuvenation or biorejuvenative medical aesthetics. So we need the inside to match the outside. And what's happened is, we had the Zoom effect, right? They call it the
Sure.
Zoom effect in our industry now, where when COVID happened, people were staring at themselves. They realized how not phenomenal they looked, especially on Zoom from certain angles and certain lighting. And so they put tons of money into overcorrection. And so people filled their lips a lot. Or, it was in that old school version of medical aesthetics, which was it looked fake.
Right.
Um, and now we have sort of shifted into this more natural process, which is more subtle differences. So instead of just enhancing your lips, it's full facial balancing. But one of the things I always tell patients or offices, for consultations, let's say, is we are not only in the business of fixing what people don't like about themselves. We know if they're coming in, it's because they don't like something about themselves. So it's also our job to enhance what they do like about themselves. And if they don't know, it's our job to help find that with them. And it's a
Yeah.
journey, and that increases patient retention and trust and loyalty and all of those things as well. So I don't ever want, I've had a patient come in once and they were like, I came in for a general mole check at my dermatologist and I left with a $10,000 treatment plan. I didn't know I was so ugly. And I was
Right.
like, no, like, no, that is exactly what we don't want to be doing.
Right.
And so it's more subtle differences now on the outside, but we're trying to get the inside to match the outside. So making sure that we are optimizing your internal everything. So your sleep and your like NAD therapy has
Yeah.
grown enormously. One of my close friends, Heather, is probably honestly one of the best biohackers I know. Um, she's a PA, but strictly works in biohacking now. And we were just talking about that the other day, where that differentiation of really bringing in the internal is what that's where we're really seeing the boost in revenue and practices is because they
Mm.
don't know how not good they feel until you optimize things like NAD or whatever vitamin therapy, red light therapy, any type of thing that they might need. So we're seeing, and then they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't feel bad, but I didn't know I could feel this good.
Right.
And so, and then you want more. And then you start, obviously the semaglutide train, the injectable weight loss and all of that has taken off, but that doesn't come without its own issues. So,
Right.
that comes with possible hair loss, that comes with skin laxity. You're losing a lot of weight in a short amount of time that you're going to have to help with as well. So,
Yeah.
there's lots of things that go into it.
Yeah, I could see that. Biohacking. I haven't heard it called that. I'll have to look into that more. I actually just got a vitamin B shot last week for the first time ever. And I feel like my energy levels did pick up. I was kind of skeptical. I'm like, am I going to pee all this out immediately and it's gone? Or is this actually going to do
No.
something? And,
So you need to talk to Heather. Honestly, she would be such a great person to have on your podcast too, because
oh, awesome.
when I tell you she is, and I've met biohackers all around the world, Heather is legitimately like top 10. I mean, obviously just in peak physical performance, but really focuses on her biohacking. I'll send you her Instagram page as well.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, Heath underscore and dot wellness. But
Okay.
and she really like, especially with your, motocross and things like that, with your recovery,
Yeah.
and really just making sure that you're optimizing your muscle function, optimizing that structure is around. I mean, you've broken more bones in your body than,
Yeah.
most
A
people
lot.
have in their entire life. So
Right.
it's really making sure that support system is in place, that you heal faster, you can recover faster, but also that you are um, internally optimizing your body.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
actually just hired a coach last week as well. I did a lot of new things last week. So
Yeah.
I haven't had a coach in 15 years since I was trying to race bicycles professionally. And so I hired this coach just for off-road racing on motorcycles. And that's kind of inspired the vitamin B shot and then getting my test levels because I'll be 39 this year. It's my last year to race in my 30s. So I'm trying to win a national championship in my 30s before I graduate to the 40-year-old
Fix the
class, which is
bucket.
really depressing. But what do you do?
But still, it's, and it is one of those things where, like, I promise you, if you meet Heather, you will be racing better in your 40s than you ever have in your 30s. Um,
Awesome.
and it's because you are doing that internal correction where, like, you don't even know how poorly you sleep until you optimize your sleep. And so, and that's why
Yeah.
it is biohacking or biorejuvenation, where we are manipulating our own biology to hack the aging cycle or to
Yeah.
rejuvenate our own aging. And that's sort of where, I mean, people are flying all over the world to get stem cells for all different types of things, and peptide therapy and all these different things that really optimize it. And I mean, I know I've spoken a lot about, I really do not know, I have not met anyone truly who fully understands it as well as Heather does.
Wow. Is she out of Atlanta also, or where's
She
she?
is out of Atlanta.
Okay,
You can
awesome.
just
Yeah.
drive on down and come see her.
I'd love to connect with her. It'd be great. I need all
Yeah.
the help I can get this year because I've got 8 races that are going to destroy me. So
Yeah. Well, you need to, and the thing is, it's all about prevention, right? So it's not reaction. It's progressive treatment, not aggressive treatment.
right.
And so really making sure that we're maintaining, we're correcting, and we're maintaining. So, I always ask people when they come in, do you want to treat this issue or do you want to correct this issue? And, part of that is my consultation process where patients will say to me, I don't know, what's the difference? And I'm like, treatments make you feel good. They make you temporarily look good, but they don't enact lasting change. You can treat anything once, you can treat anything multiple times non consecutively, but they're not going to enact lasting change. Whereas correction, you need some commitment, you need some patience, and you need consistency.
Yeah.
Um, but it lasts a lot longer.
Yeah. That makes sense. So I'm curious, what is your skincare or self-care routine? Like you're getting toxins right like every few months, like
Yeah.
what's your routine
So,
like?
okay. So I am how people say they're extroverted introverts?
Yeah.
I'm a minimalist maximist. Okay. So
Okay.
I, I maximize what I love, which is like if I could have started getting toxin in utero, I would have. I love toxin. If I never move the top half of my face again, it'll be too soon.
Yeah.
I'm actually going tomorrow to get my toxin. Like this is as much movement as I've had in forever.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, toxin I love, but toxin is just a band-aid. It's not doing anything to actually treat the organ, which is the skin.
Right.
So yes, toxin is phenomenal and you see fast results and all that, but it also metabolizes and wears off quickly and you need more and more and more. Um, so I tell people you can age gracefully without toxin. You shouldn't, but you can. Um, I'm not a huge filler person. I get filler only in a couple of areas. I have um, very large lips to begin with from my dad. My little sister has them too. When I do get filler in my lips, it's literally just in my Cupid's bow here because I like a defined Cupid's bow. And I just get some filler in my nasolabial fold. So I really don't do a ton of filler. I used to hate my fat cheeks, and now being in this industry, I'm like, please stay.
Yeah.
And then skincare. So for me, my skincare is the most important. I was on chemo for a number of years, so my skin is ionized, very sensitive. So tretinoins and hydroquinones I can't use. They're too aggressive on my skin. Our dark spot lifting serum from VI Peel has changed my life because it's been able to allow me to have that melanocyte suppression and also correction without being too aggressive in the form of a hydroquinone. So I use our dark spot lifting serum. I use our skin brightening system, which is our dark spot lifting serum. It's our vitamin C concentrate, an antioxidant, and it is our sunscreen. I also use um, bean extract or snail mucin. Bean extract is the new snail mucin. So I
Okay.
do that like once or twice a week. And then, of course, I have genetic melanoma in my family. So even on hot days, I am covered up always. And then sunscreen, it's sunscreen, sunscreen, sunscreen. So for me, that's it. I'm not a huge makeup wearer. I would say, you know, biggest tip I would give to people is, dear God, please wash your face before you go to bed. Um, Especially if you wear makeup every day. Like people don't realize how disgusting your face has holes in it, and those
Yeah.
holes collect bacteria and dust and pollution and all that kind of stuff. So especially if you have makeup on, like my friends know I yell at them if they're staying over, we're on a girls trip or something and they get in bed and I'm like, nope, get up, go wash your face right now. Like you're not getting in bed with a full face of makeup. So
It's great
um
advice.
yeah, cleanser, sunscreen, moisturizer, and some form of, antioxidant, vitamin C, and then some form of pigment suppressor, and you're good to go.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
starting to add more and more. I just got Botox for the first time about 3 months ago. It's starting to wear off.
Gosh, I'm
And
so proud of you. I remember when I gave you that first skincare kit
yep, yep,
and I
yep.
was like, use it.
Uh-huh.
But your skin
Um,
looks so good.
well, thanks. I also have some good lighting in here that helps as well. And I just got back from the Keys. I always look a little bit better with the tan. I know like every person I talk to about that's in this industry is like, no, don't get a tan, it's terrible for this.
No,
But
I
um,
know. I
I
used to
haven't,
hate my pale skin, and now I'm like, no. The elderly ladies in the office tell me I'm alabaster, so I've come to embrace that word.
yeah. Yeah, that's a classy way of saying it. I like that.
I know. I'm like, that's a classy way of saying you look like you're near death, pale.
If you
Thank
go
you.
and look at the aesthetic marketing partners Instagram, as pointed out to me the other day, my recent post, I think last Friday for Friday tip, and then it's in that grid, it's the grid right below it. And it was before I went to the Keys, and it looks like I'm translucent. And then the one above, it looks like
That's
I kind of have a
me. I
tan.
mean, hello. Do you see that? You can literally see my entire vascular
Yeah.
system through my skin. It's awful. And so, like, even my dad, who does not care aesthetically at all, I was wearing shorts. He came to visit with my mom a couple of weeks ago, and he was like, your legs are looking a little pale. You need some color." And I'm like, Dad, you're not supposed to care about this. So
Uh,
that's when I know it's really bad.
yeah. Well, Janice, I think that answered we jumped all over the place. Our whole question list just kind of went to hell immediately. And then, I mean,
I
uh,
know, but we answer everything
yeah,
in time, you know? That's
we
why I
took the
love
long
doing
way
your
around.
podcast because we always end up, deviating, but then coming back on track.
It's a blessing and a curse. ADD, ADHD is it is what it is.
For sure. For sure. Well, I can't thank you enough for having me again. Honestly, I always love being able to see you. Last time it was in person, this time it's on Zoom, but so appreciative and honored that you asked me to do the podcast again. So,
Hey, thanks for coming on and sharing all the knowledge and experience. I'm sure people are gonna love to listen to this one, so I'm excited to put it out there to everyone. And I'll let you know next time down in Atlanta, we grab dinner, catch up, hang out.
yeah, for sure. And I'll send you Heather's information as well.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Janice. Hope you have a good
Thanks,
week.
Sam. You too. Have a great day.
All right. Bye bye.